Hello and welcome to the last of our live week broadcasts. So this week we've been exploring what we would have been discovering and discussing at Interpack had that not been events intervening. Today, once again, we're going to be speaking to an eclectic mix of experts and innovators and sharing different visions of the future of packaging. We are going to be joined by two esteemed guests from Australia in the first part of this broadcast. And later on, we're going to be introducing guests from 4 different parts of the value chain, those being Rockwell Automation, Domino, Coherent, and AMB Packaging. And as always at the end, unless we run on far too long, we'll try to address some of the questions from you, our audience. So please do submit any questions that you have via the YouTube chat function. So let's start with our 2 guests from Australia. First of all, what time is it there? We've got Pierre Pienaar, who is Professor Pierre Pienaar, who is President of World Packaging Organization. Hi, Pierre.
Very good evening to you.
What time is it where you are at the moment?
It's going on just after 8 p.m. in the evening. So we're about 8 hours ahead of you guys. So we can always tell you what the weather, what sort of weather you could expect. Seems like we already had that weather.
Okay, well, we never have Australian weather where I'm sitting, but even though it's kind of getting towards summer here and getting towards winter where you are, I think you get the better weather. And secondly, we have Nerida Kelton. Hi, Nerida.
Hi, good evening.
Nerida is Executive Director of the Australian Institute of Packaging. The two of you know each other quite well, I understand, because Pierre is also Education Director at AIP.
That's correct. We work together all the time.
Okay, great. Well, we'll hope to have a great conversation with the two of you. So can you fill me in? What's the situation in Australia? Are you both on lockdown as we are here in the Northern Hemisphere?
We've just had because we're in Queensland, so every state is different, and we had a couple of our restrictions lifted on Sunday. For me, the most important one was I actually got to see my mother for Mother's Day, which was wonderful because I hadn't seen her for 3 months.
Okay, great.
And there continues to be a gradual lifting of the restrictions in coming weeks, depending on how well, I guess, we react to those lifting of the restrictions. They have warned us that the lockdown will happen again if we don't, abide by the rules.
Okay. So both of you would have been at Interpack this week had Corona not happened. Pierre, first of all, could you outline what your activities would have been? What would your daily diary have been as the representative of the World Packaging Organization?
The Interpack is sort of a barometer for the WPO, and I'm going to use the word WPO, so I'm sure everyone understands that WPO is World Packaging Organization, representing somewhat of 60 countries. So it's by country membership, not by companies or individuals. Interpack is certainly the melting pot of our packaging industry, and that's where we always come together and obviously look forward to it every 3 years. So like many others, it's a great disappointment for us. It's one thing doing things virtually like we are at the moment, but to actually be there in person with those folk is greatly different. Thank you for that background, Tim. I like that. Makes me feel at home. And so, not being able to be there and trying to do things virtually is very difficult, especially with us having such a vast diversification of folk that are belonging to WPO in terms of language, as an example, makes it rather difficult trying to do it virtually. I mean, we're adapting. somewhat, I guess, slowly, making mistakes along the way as we try to communicate with each other all the time. We have set up a lot more programs where we are increasing the communication between the different countries because of the coronavirus. But certainly, we ensure that we have the international board meeting during that period there. We also have a national executive or international executive meeting while we're there, where we map out at least the next 12 to 18 months always. And certainly in some instances beyond that, depending on what is really happening around the world. At the moment, obviously, it's coronavirus, so that dominates nearly every meeting that we have, and the impact that it's having on all the aspects of packaging. You know, packaging is not just that box or that bottle or that flexible material covering an article. It extends beyond that. So certainly coronavirus has had a huge impact right through the supply chain. So really, if you look at it, it's impacting from cradle right through to the grave. Although with a certain economy, and hopefully we'll discuss that later on, it's somewhat different. And then the other aspect is the World Stars. World Stars is a very important event for the global packaging industry, because that's where the best of the best are acknowledged for their innovation, and to miss out on, you know, those folk going up onto that international stage and not being able to show off, if I can use that word, it's a great disappointment to those individuals who we've announced the winners, but we can't acknowledge them in person.
Yeah. So we'll come back to the World Stars and also to the implications of COVID-19 in a minute. But would you say you've been able to mitigate the cancellation or the postponement of Interpack by communicating in other mediums as we are at the moment? Have you been able to hold those board meetings virtually, etc.?
Yeah, you know, we will, and we're putting in place right as we talk to have virtual meetings. You know, in fact, as recent as last night, we had an executive meeting where 10 of us come together, and they're from all parts of the world, and it's important to hear the issues that each of those areas and regions are having, and how they're coping from a packaging perspective. Because what affects us here, say in Australia, is very different to what's happening in Europe, and the effect that is having in Europe. So it is important that we continue communicating, even if it is via these various platforms that we're on at the moment. And then obviously in smaller group chats, WhatsApp is often used as well. But yes, we certainly ensure that the communication channels are open all the time. As I mentioned earlier, it does get difficult when you have a language problem and you don't have a translator between on a telephone, for example. But I'm sure there are ways of overcoming it, and we're learning as we're going along.
Okay, thank you, Pierre. Nerida, you were going to be at Interpack as well this week, and I'd circled in the program that you were going to be speaking at the Life Without Packaging conference. I understand you're going to be talking about the AIP's Save Food Packaging project. Could you tell us a little bit about what we would have been hearing?
Thanks, Tim, for that. Yeah, it is a real shame that I'm not there to present the project that we're doing. It's a really exciting project about safe food packaging guidelines and criteria. The AIP has been working for a number of years on safe food packaging guidelines and criteria, and particularly in relation to our awards program, because we have a Safe Food Packaging Award. And we've also worked really hard with the World Packaging Organization to integrate it into the World Star Safe Food Packaging category. So one of the things that we've worked on for the last 18 months is to become a core participant of the Fight Food Waste Cooperative Research Centre. The Fight Food Waste CRC, as we call it, is a $130 million 61 participant industry, academic and company-based research and industry-driven project that's actually divided up into 3 areas, which is reduce, transform and engage. And that's a really, really exciting project to be a part of, because we can actually slip our safe food packaging guidelines and criteria into the project and work with the universities across Australia to come up with science-driven data, research and reports that actually prove to us that packaging does have a role to play in minimising food waste. So that's sort of the summary, the short version of what I was going to present. But it's a project that we intend to roll out globally, and we intend to work with all of the WPO member countries so that we can actually embed safe food packaging guidelines into packaging development and NPD processes.
Okay, thank you. I'm really curious about this because in Europe over the last 2 or 3 or maybe more years, there's been a lot of focus on this tension between the preventing food waste function of packaging and the issue of packaging waste in the environment, and a lot of pushback against the emphasis that we may have had in the previous decade on minimizing waste and optimizing packaging and the negative consequences in terms of plastic packaging in particular in the environment. Are there any differences in nuance around this debate as you see it in your region?
I mean, I think we're challenged with the same thing. We have 2 targets, so we're actually competing. So we have a target that we call the 2025 National Packaging Target, which is our sustainable target, and that's reducing and recycling of the materials. And then we have a halving food waste that goes to landfill by 50% by 2030. When we start talking about our safe food packaging guidelines, you're correct, Tim, that we actually do get a little bit of pushback from the industry to say that it's a conflict and it's actually conflicting with the 2025 National Packaging Target. And what we're trying to do is give them a more balanced approach to understand that food waste and cost of energy, carbon footprint of the production of food, and packaging is only one component. It's like literally less than 3% of the actual carbon footprint of most food production. So we have a really big task ahead of us globally to re-educate not only the consumers, but also the industry on the true role of packaging. So we're literally going back to basics and redefining, well, using the correct definition of protecting, preserving, containing, and extension, barrier, etc., and re-educating people that if we don't want to waste 1/3 of the food around the world, then we have to go back to the basics of the true role of packaging. So yes, it does conflict in some cases, but as long as we are ensuring that our packaging technologists and designers are using recyclable content, recycled material, and packaging that actually is truly recyclable in our collection facilities, then I think we've got a pretty good balance.
Thanks, Nerida. Pierre, you alluded to the World Packaging Organization's activities around the world and the differences in needs and circumstances they're facing at the moment. I'd like you to give us a bit of an insight into the extent to which the world packaging community has a shared sense of challenges and responsibilities, or to which those demands that they're facing at the moment can be quite contrasting from region to region.
Well, it's certainly interesting, that question. And the reason why I'm saying that is because listening to the different regions around the world, and that information is coming in all the time on a daily basis. And it is interesting how varied we are. If you take Southeast Asia as an example, or if one takes developing countries versus developed countries, then therein lies a massive difference. And what works in Southeast Asia might not work in Europe or Scandinavia. What am I trying to say here? The fact of the matter is that you have to look at a particular region and focus on that particular area. If one takes, well, one of the three main focuses of mine during my term of WPO as president, it will be or is the reduction in packaging waste. So if one looks at the packaging waste across the globe, then there are particular areas that are, especially when it comes to plastic waste, is greater in certain regions than in others. Right at this moment, we're focusing on certain areas in Southeast Asia in ways of reducing the plastic waste. And I think with this COVID-19 and the focus on ensuring that the food arrives at their destination in a suitable state related to COVID-19, not a suitable state prior to COVID-19. There's a distinguished an absolute difference between those two, because the consumers are now wanting the less exposed food than ever before. Now, that particular requirement we are getting in from all the areas around the world. But if one looks at particular areas, especially in developing countries, then there's a lot of open markets in those areas. And so they challenged. If one looks at certain parts of Central Africa, for example, and the information coming in from those folk, then although in the past they've always had exposed food on the open markets, that's not acceptable now. And what's going to cover it in the majority of cases is going to be flexible packaging. And so we need to focus our attention on what is happening to that flexible packaging or soft packaging or soft plastics after the contents has been removed. And hence why we are embarking, we as in WPO, along with our colleagues in Southeast Asia, in particular countries, looking at ensuring that the plastics are recycled more so than ever before. Otherwise, what will happen is that the Great Pacific Garbage Patch will even get larger. And we simply cannot continue in that particular vein. So that is a very important aspect right now that's affecting open exposed foods. If I look at the meal kit subscription on home deliveries, for example, there's been a huge increase in that across the globe. That's more in the developed countries. We don't really find that too much in the developing countries. And along with that, there comes a lot of packaging with it. Instead of you going to the supermarket comes to your front door. And how do we get it there? By packaging. And you might think, well, if you look at your own little patch, then it might be a box and a few little goodies inside. That's not much packaging. But multiply that by a few million people, and that's a lot of packaging that's generated on a daily basis, and it adds up very quickly. And so we need to put measures in place across the globe, but directed towards developing and developed countries. And that's one of our prime targets at the moment. We're looking more at that than maybe directly at education, because that's one of our prime pillars of the WPO. So while we are changing our in-class learning to online learning, we are focusing on, and while that's going on, we are focusing our attention on what are we doing about this wasted packaging, because this all is linked into the education side, and wastage of packaging is all linked to the waste of food. And I'm sure Nerida will discuss that later as well. So this is also another focus on the WPO, is food wastage. and what are we doing about on the ground in trying to reduce that food wastage across the world. And again, you know, the different regions have different issues when it comes to food. In terms of pre-harvest up to the, let's say the, taking the food into a cannery, for example, and then from the cannery to the plate. There's a very vast difference in the food wastage percentages prior or post. And again, that's related to developed countries and developing countries. So there's a lot that is happening that all of a sudden the game has changed in the last sort of 8 weeks. And we're trying to adapt ourselves to meet that demand as fast as we can.
Thank you, Pierre. Nerida, we're back to the topic of COVID-19. What are your perspectives? I understand AIP represents not just Australia, but New Zealand and you know, the wider Oceania region. From your position on the other side of the world, how do you see the impacts at the moment on the packaging industry, and possibly the longer term implications that may come from this?
I think that we're probably seeing the same as most countries in that consumers are very much focused on their safety, their food safety, and how they're actually getting their food. So that actually turns it back around to smaller portions, you know, the ready meals, things that are going, food that's going in the freezer. They're buying a lot more food now because they're staying at home. So we do have concerns, like everybody else, that perhaps the 2025 national packaging targets might go to the side. They might get shifted to the side just a little bit for some of the smaller companies, because at the end of the day, they're really just trying to survive. So there are concerns about that, because we really don't want the momentum that we've got in Australia and New Zealand, which is incredible at the moment, to be moved, like to lose that focus, and people to go back to the old ways of not caring about whether they're manufacturing with virgin versus recycled content, whether they don't care whether they're using single-use plastic bags. So we're certainly seeing a very big move back into single-use, particularly the single-use plastic bags. So I guess as an industry, we have a responsibility to ensure that doesn't continue for too long, but we also do understand that consumers are driven by their own safety. So hopefully after COVID, we'll be able to go back to the realities of our sustainable packaging journeys that we're all on globally. I know that a lot of the multinationals, it's not going to affect them because they have really big sustainable packaging teams. So they have a goal, they have objectives. It won't change in COVID. But for the smaller businesses that are just trying to survive, I think it will have an effect on them.
Thank you. Thank you. So Pierre and Nerida, thanks very much for that discussion. We need to move on to the second part of this broadcast now. If you're able to hang on, I know it's rather late where you are. It would be great to have you at the end in case there are some questions from the audience that you'd like to address. So I have to confess that this is actually a virtual background, and I'm not in front of a sunset, so I'm going to move back to Interpack and to Europe to introduce the 4 other guests that we have today, representing different parts of the value chain. So we're going to be welcoming automation giant Rockwell Automation, who will be represented today by Jason Minto and Andrew Smith. We also have the industrial laser specialist Coherent, represented by Michael Batchelor. The leading digital print and coding technologist Domino with Alexandros Muntis, and the international end-to-end food packaging specialist AMB Packaging, represented by Giles Peacock and Mark Prynne. So let's just, before we get on to our one-to-one interviews, have some brief reflections on the COVID discussion that we just had with Nerida. First of all, let's turn to our friends at Rockwell Automation. Now, the technical wizardry here. I'm going to share my screen. There was a poll that we conducted, a survey of our readership, which I hope you can see right now, asking about the longer term impacts of the pandemic. And it was suggested by 30%, so nearly a third of the readers, that we would see a rise in investment in automation as a result of this. So perhaps that's something that would be welcomed by Rockwell Automation. Jason, could you give us some insights? What do you think are the key implications of the COVID pandemic from your side?
So what we've seen coming from the Rockwell standpoint, we've seen a lot of manufacturers. You could say their core troubles have been in two directions right now. Number one, being able to have the core staff available. Very often they were splitting production shifts to keep the separation and to continue production to the demand, and not to forget that the demand had increased because of mass buying. So this was also interesting to ensure that they had the staff available, which was a lot of pressure on a lot of manufacturers. And then coming back to the other part, which is really being able to obtain the raw materials, whether that's packaging materials, whether it's you could say the pure ingredients to serve their market. So this was the core issues. From my perspective, to answer to your question, I believe there's going to be, for a lot of you could say a good proportion of the companies, 30%, maybe 40%, we will see the results. I think they were going to increase their automation content throughout their factories. They will be definitely looking to move to more smart machine philosophy, meaning really to bring more flexibility into their machine design. You could say, which means really looking at things like independent card technology to think about quick changeovers to reduce, you could say, the manpower and time to make modifications on machines. Taking a look to bringing in more robotics, automating more the pick and place operations, the things which we're typically seeing done by you could say primary, secondary packaging areas. I do think that this will impact further than just the packaging line itself. You'll see a lot more AGVs being brought in, AGRs, so the robotic versions, and also you could say may need to move the raw materials in and out, and also to move the final products into the warehousing. You'll see a lot of more automation in the warehousing area.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Let's ask Alexandros from Domino about this. What's your view of the impact of COVID-19? I must say I've found myself a lot more conscious of food safety, maybe for irrational reasons, but over the last few weeks as a consumer, as opposed to a packaging journalist, I found myself looking at use-by dates and just a bit more conscious of the whole area of security.
Yes, I agree. Clearly, this has put quite a focus on some of the industries we serve as Domino. It's put huge challenge on all industries, but some have been affected negatively, some have been affected positively in a way, like food and bev, and the pharmaceutical business. The demand has increased, and it is very critical in terms of supply chain and where we're involved. As has been mentioned, being part of the supply chain, we almost had the responsibility to keep those lines running in terms of ink. If you don't get the ink in time and in place, then you don't get the best before date. Then you're wasting the products. So we, as a company, we Domino has clearly had to react to this changing environment. And interestingly, about the coding and marking, we are typically at the end of the line. We were satisfying those critical key businesses, critical businesses, but we also had to do the same within our company to be able to satisfy our customers. So we put a huge effort in supporting those customers and keep the lines running. So yeah, it's been it's not been an easy period, but we've been consistently gone above and beyond to keep those businesses running effectively.
Okay, thank you. Let's ask now Giles or Mark. I don't know who would like to take this question from AMB Packaging. So from the point of view of a food packaging converter, how has this impacted on you? Are you seeing, do you think, greater appreciation of the positive role of packaging coming from this?
Yeah, sure. Let me take that, Mark, maybe to start with. You know, it's been a very, very interesting couple of months, clearly, because nobody knew quite how day after day each day would turn out. Initially, we saw a significant and huge spike in demand for our products because there was quite some substantial panic buying. And then consequently, due to a lot more home eating and less restaurant eating, etc., there's been a steady increase in demand throughout the period for our packaged products. Now, throughout that period, the first thing I need to do is thank all of the AMB staff, because they've been coming into the operational manufacturing plants and working throughout that period. So thanks to the whole of the team for being there for all of us during that period. But there's certainly a change in customer behavior, because actually the thing that struck me is how important supply chain and getting goods on time and full to customer has been throughout that period. We've had some stretches in capacity during the peaks, which we've needed to almost allocate our capacities to customers to make sure that everybody can keep going. And we've seen really one of the major areas is getting our customers looking for reassurance from us that we can continue to manufacture and we can get goods right across Europe into their food production areas and keep going there. So we've seen, you know, quite a nice increase in business as a result. It seems that the agenda of the environment and sustainability has certainly dropped off in the last couple of weeks. I'm sure it's going to come back, and AMB is very, very well placed to cope with that. And then furthermore, I mean, we're 95% food production company, but also our rigid plastic that's used in much of the food applications also has found a new application, because we're selling a lot of material now for PPE as well. And, you know, we've helped in many cases offering free samples and material to different companies. And we've actually got quite a number of new customers that are operating that market area into providing PPE and the visors that are being used across the world now.
Certainly, we've seen a huge number of stories about businesses across the value chain, engineering, converting raw materials, being very agile in providing solutions to this urgent requirement for pharmaceuticals and protective equipment and everything that's suddenly in much greater demand. Thanks, Giles. And finally, Michael from Coherent, how has COVID impacted on your business?
Well, I think we can firstly all recognise and relate to the issues and challenges highlighted by the other speakers there, for sure. Nobody has missed out on this, and COVID-19 has brought many sectors of industry to a complete standstill, and substantially impacted on individuals on a very personal level, and as well as affected the global economy, of course. However, the requirement for essential commodities such as food and medicines has not diminished, and hence packaging that caters for these essential industries remains in great demand. And to keep up with the current demand, we, of course, as a company, have taken measures to keep our factories and applications laboratories open and operational, albeit, of course, with minimal staff and maximum security measures and restrictions in place. One assurance our customers have is that Coherent is a truly global company, and we have country offices or local representation worldwide. And so even with the many border closures that we have currently and restrictions on travel, our customers may still expect prompt service support from their local Coherent office or representative.
Thank you, Michael. All right, let's burrow deeper into some of these topics and innovations that we would have been talking about at Interpack. First of all, I'd like to invite Rockwell Automation to join the interview. So we've got Jason Minto and Andrew Smith coming back. So first question, we've been discussing sustainability and waste reduction across our series of broadcasts. What role can automation and digitization more generally play in helping organizations drive towards their goals in these areas?
Tim, I can take that question. I mean, it's clear that, you know, Safe Food Initiative and other activities seek to influence the behavior of not only manufacturers, but consumers. We've heard that from the speakers this morning. To reduce food waste, though, we really do need to pay attention to shelf life, to food preparation techniques, to pack sizes, to product variants, as well as the supply chain. And to that end, at Rockwell, we are supporting our customers to develop and deploy flexible systems, more flexible systems that enable multiple pack sizes to be and product variants to be manufactured and packaged on the same line without necessarily the need for complex changeover procedures. Ultimately, this reduces not only the machine footprint, but the energy consumption, but also the increase in product variants can help to increase or decrease the food waste and increase the productivity of a particular plant per meter squared of production space. And it helps the manufacturer to deliver products that meet consumer demands as they change. And we've already talked today about how they've changed in one direction from, you know, bulk buying maybe or in larger quantities and or different types of quantities, and how we anticipate that will change. So consumer demand is constantly flexible. Jason, I don't know if you want to add anything to that there.
Yeah, that would be great. I think also maybe to add to your point, you could say digital engineering tools could be also seen as a huge value for both OEMs and also manufacturers here, because I think a lot of people have seen around messages around digital twins, but I think you can do a complete simulation now using these tools for the machine, the line. You can do emulation to test code, to really see how things behave together before even shipping or even building this machine together. And just thinking about how you could say optimize, maximize your overall machine design or system design. You could also show this to the actual end manufacturer before actually say shipping the machine to site, to even see how the behavior within the existing architectures will work, if it will fit, if fine tuning is needed, and that actually saves a lot of energy as a whole. So you can reduce commissioning time, you can reduce the overall waste in terms of, you could say, the machine redesign needs, time to market needs, and you could say also when you're doing setup and testing of machines at the beginning, most of you who have been in the packaging situation, tons and tons of packaging prototypes and systems are made, and so there's a lot of waste just in the startup, and also at the end through the standard production process. Very often when a machine is not designed really great, you also have product losses through the standard production process. But digital engineering tools can really bring a value in this space.
Thank you. I've heard Rockwell talking quite a lot about this concept of the connected enterprise, and it's a really, really nice idea. Can you give us a little insight into how this can translate to satisfying concrete ambitions like waste reduction and other sustainability metrics?
Go ahead.
Yeah, a fully connected enterprise provides visibility and the ability to manage processes throughout the business. You know, monitoring performance of the machine, the factory, the entire enterprise can ensure the flow of raw materials, work in progress, the finished goods is appropriate to meet consumer demands. But applying things like advanced analytics to the system gives context and insights that are available for a more dynamic operation. For example, advanced analytics can provide, as we know, predictions on performance and insights how to avoid issues and failures. At a simple level, if you imagine a production line that starts with perishable raw material and processes these into a prepared food item. With advanced analytics, the system can identify a pending failure, for example, with a palletizer. And if avoidable, can make changes to the production flow to reduce the use of those raw materials at the beginning of the process while the palletizer is down. And this reduces waste, it reduces energy consumption, and eliminates lost production, ultimately helping the business to become more efficient and more cost effective.
Thanks very much. So final question. You would have been exhibiting at Interpack, I know. Would Rockwell have been presenting any product launches, any innovative technologies there?
Yes, well, we've discussed the technologies that are helping customers to become more efficient, more sustainable. And what we wanted to do at Interpack is we wanted to showcase these solutions in real applications. So we will have several customer machines present on the stand that demonstrate how these technologies are utilized to deliver connectivity, efficiency, and flexibility. For example, visitors will see how integrated cart technology used in an assembly and packaging machine is helping a medical device company to scale up their production as market demand changes for their product. Another machine on our stand shows how Emulate 3D helps machine builders to develop a true digital twin of the machine, which significantly reduces development time, supports the design of an extension to a factory or even a new factory, enables virtual commissioning. We'll also be showing how advanced analytics is applied to machines or lines or complete enterprises to deliver benefits in production planning and maintenance and indeed remote support. This also includes the use of our augmented reality product, which provides a platform, again, for maintenance and support, but also for operator training. Visitors to our stand will also be able to experience a tour of a plant using our virtual and augmented reality solutions. And we want to showcase how these innovative products help design, manufacture, operate efficient and safe manufacturing plants. I think we are witnessing a time of transition in applicable technology, and the current crisis has highlighted the need for flexible manufacturing systems that can be supported remotely. So we wanted to showcase great examples of how technology is being deployed to meet changing consumer demands while increasing efficiency and sustainability, even in these difficult times, these difficult and unusual kind of times for people when they're working in plants. Essentially, even before COVID took hold, we were helping customers to achieve these goals. So hopefully we will be able to show customers and visitors to our stand, all of these technologies, but in a real application, not just the theory of it.
Certainly, over multiple Interpacks, I've witnessed this talk of Industry 4.0 going from something that was a bit more hypothetical, more in the future tense, to something with really concrete, impressive present tense applications. Thank you very much, Andrew. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks.
Let's now turn to Alexandros from Domino. Hi, Alexandros. I'm interested in your insights in the future of manufacturing in your segment, and what services that printers can provide to meet those demands.
Yes, to be fair, I echo the previous speakers and a lot of the technologies, and albeit for Domino, we're at the far end of the manufacturing line. But there is a common there's a synergy there. We do see the in terms of printers, there's a variety of industry 4.0 technologies that will help in the coding and marking side of things. Of course, with the having cloud capabilities to allow the new levels of service for customers. For example, being able to reorder consumables without having to stop the line, without ever running out of consumables. Linking basically systems, even down to the consumables of the printer, to an MES or MRP or even an ERP type of system, which will help with the interconnectivity of all those systems you would find in any production environment. So that's the sort of future that we see, and we want to enable our products. And of course, the servitization that might come into the industry. We want to be able to offer the flexibility in the future, maybe be pay per code or validate per code. The technology will be there to support those types of services, if you like. But of course, it's not just on the printer side. We, Domino as a company, there's also involvement in the sustainability of things. We want to be involved with customers in a more of even consulting way. We are the experts in a way of printing ink, putting ink on a substrate. So we want to walk around the compliance side with our customers. So that will help with the sustainability going further into the future.
And can you give some insights into the specific functionalities that your printers need to provide to customers in meeting these needs?
Yes, absolutely. So from my previous answer, you can see that connectivity for our printers is key. They needs to be able to connect into different protocols that are available around in a factory, on a plant. The usability, we want the usability as an enabler around those services, and how easy it is to integrate a printer effectively into the ecosystem that exists into the plant. Yeah, so we want to be able to offer this efficient and accurate code while maintain the interconnectivity of all the moving parts effectively in a plant.
Okay, thank you. And as a final question, same as I asked Rockwell Automation, would you have been introducing any new innovations or products at Interpack?
Absolutely, yeah. At Domino, we release products all year round. There's a continuous process, and as it would have been, we would have been releasing our new thermal inkjet printers to the world. Effectively, we are doing this virtually now. Again, this is a printer that would takes exactly what I mentioned before. It takes this easy to integrate and the easy to operate side of things. Yeah, we have small footprint printers with many protocols on them, so we can interconnect to other systems. Easy to operate. We have all this modern touch screens, as you would expect, and a web server running on the printers and the controllers, and pretty much taking all those services and functions that we would our customers would need to respond to their customers, their consumer demands, maybe government changes or late-stage customization in their products. We are offering a new printer, a solution, not just a printer though, to satisfy those demands.
Thank you very much, Alexandros. So let's turn now to Coherent and Michael Batchelor. I have to confess that lasers is not one of my stronger suits when talking about technology. So I hope to learn something from this interview as well. So first question, if you were behind me there in the halls of Messe Dusseldorf at Interpack, what would you have been introducing? What would have been the highlight of your exhibit?
Well, the intention this time was to showcase our new Powerline C series lasers. These are CO2 laser-based subsystems, appropriate for a wide variety of packaging applications, including drilling, perforating, scoring, scribing, marking, and engraving, and all. And they're suitable for use with all common packaging materials. These lasers typically are supplied class 4, ready for OEM integration, although additionally we have a series of standard class 1 configurable systems and solutions which form what we refer to as our Star Pack range of products. And these are appropriate for either web direction or cross-web processing with our Star Pack WD or Star Pack CW respectively. Then there's the Star Pack AP, which is really our packaging all-rounder, and it has web direction and cross-web functionality all in one machine. And finally, there's the Star Pack Pouch, which is a compact machine ready for integration into pouch making lines. More widely, the Powerline C lasers are of course applicable for general material processing applications in non-packaging relating industries, if I dare speak about that. They're capable of processing all commonly used polymers and rubber, as well as glass, paper, cardboard, wood, and so on and so on. We have a very broad range of power levels available. So we start at about 100 watts and we head right up to 2.5 kilowatts. And this power is all served up at a variety of interesting and useful wavelengths, and they can be chosen to match your material absorption spectra. So that's where we are. That's what we would have shown. And this comprehensive range of products, I have to say, with these, we're able to meet the most demanding customer requirements, as well as satisfy those on more limited budgets.
Okay, thank you. Can you give us a bit more information about the applications that these would be used for within the packaging industry?
Yeah, certainly. To reiterate a little, perhaps wide applicability within packaging, high-speed perforating, scoring, scribing, as well as the more established applications of marking and coding, of course. Typical interesting applications might include easy open or easy tear for food packaging. So, for example, personal individual allocations of biscuits, cookies, coffee sticks, for example. And here the laser simply scribes the foil where the consumer should open it. And the consumer needs only to tear just a little in order to open the package easily and in a controlled way. Sometimes these packages, of course, can be designed to be resealable. And of course, this presents no additional problem to the laser process at all. And for the consumer, this resealability, this resealing feature ensures that the food stays fresh for longer and helps minimize food waste. Another application that's interesting is the one for modified atmosphere packaging, or perhaps to be more correct, controlled atmosphere packaging. So in this case, the laser is piercing the film with a prescribed number of tiny holes, and the size and number of which depends on the nature and weight of the produce to be contained within the package. And the reason for all of this, of course, is to keep fresh food fresh for longer.
Okay, thank you. So some of the applications you've described can be met by other technologies. Can you give a sense of why we would choose laser technology for some of these, and what are the benefits to the customer of laser?
Yeah, it depends on very much on the application. Of course, some applications can be met only by the laser technology. So, for example, I touched there on the modified atmosphere packaging or controlled, and of course, often these holes are very small. They head down to as little as 50 microns, and 50 microns is what, about half the width of or diameter of a typical human hair. So laser really is the only option to produce in a controlled manner such holes. Of course, laser is extremely flexible. It's of course a very well proven technology, which unlike perhaps other production techniques and technologies, is contact and wear free. And it always surprises me, if I'm honest, that there are still packaging manufacturers out there that continue to use other production techniques instead of benefiting from the numerous advantages provided by laser technology. And the Powerline C lasers and the associated StarPack products are particularly easy to integrate into lines. They have a Dream HMI, allowing a straightforward programming of cutting and marking paths, and indeed assignment of laser parameters. Fully recyclable packaging and monolayer films or monomaterial polymers. This development is also supported by laser. And so overall, the customer is benefiting from a flexible, reliable tool with low cost of ownership.
Okay, thank you. So finally, at the beginning, I confessed my relative ignorance about laser technology. Can you tell me something about laser technology for packaging that you think I may not yet know?
Whether you know it or not, I don't know, but I guess the majority of people are blissfully unaware, for example, of the tiny holes in their vegetable, fruit, or salad packaging, and that these holes are there to allow controlled gas exchange, ensuring that, again, the fresh produce remains fresher for longer. Breathable packaging, you might say. And again, we're talking about micro perforations here, so very, very small holes. There's an advantage, of course, to having these holes to be particularly circular. And again, we have great techniques for ensuring this, even at full line speed, in web direction, that we can allow consistent hole diameters and shape and size, which really optimizes the feature here. So I have to say, there's a lot of good science, in fact, in what appears at first sight maybe to be just a simple food wrapper.
Thank you, Michael. Let's move on to our final interview now. So we have AMB Packaging, represented by Giles Peacock and Mark Prynne. Again, you would have been, actually, I don't know whether you were exhibiting at Interpack, but we're talking about innovations that we were going to be seeing at Interpack and that are coming around at the moment. Could you talk us about through some of your latest innovations and product launches?
Sure. Mark, did you want to speak, or me?
Yeah, I'll start off, Giles, thanks. Yeah, we were planning on exhibiting at Interpack. Is that the first time AMB would have been exhibiting at Interpack, Giles?
We've done it regularly, so yeah, every 3 years.
And one of the main things that we were going to be promoting at Interpack is pretty much stemming from the acquisition of the TDX business by AMB in the UK last June, was our transition from a films manufacturer to an end-to-end packaging solutions provider, a concept that we call AMB 360. AMB historically have been a films manufacturer, providing the food industry with flexible films and rigid films, but have never been able to offer a full package of end-to-end packaging solutions. The acquisition of TDX in the UK brought additional capability to the business, so we can now offer product design, prototyping, sampling, production tooling for both thermoforming and form fill seal customers. So it's enabled AMB to take a much more holistic approach to the service that they offer. The AMB 360 concept, I think we've all seen pack formats on the shelf that we've thought are maybe ill thought out or could be done better, or maybe aren't really meeting sustainability objectives, maybe because the pack format's been on the shelf for quite a while. What the 360 concept, AMB 360 concept, enables us to do is approach our customers and offer a service where they can revisit old pack formats, or as part of the new product development process, get us involved at an early stage of design, prototyping, sampling, before the new pack format goes to tooling, and look at the whole process holistically. This allows us to take a more holistic approach to evaluating the sustainability of the pack format. So when the pack format does eventually hit the shelf, it's optimized for sustainability and recyclability.
Thank you.
This concept, which is what we were going to present at Interpack, would have involved the fusion of the films business and the tooling business from the UK.
Okay, great. You just alluded to sustainability. I read that AMB Packaging is in the process of developing an easy break PET product. And I understand this is a design for recyclability concept. Can you shed some light on that, please?
Maybe I'll jump in here, Mark. So, and if you look at where AMB is now positioned itself with the 360 aspect that Mark was talking about, really we've built the business on 4 pillars. So safety, service, sustainability, and design. Design is all of this sort of conceptual stuff that we've added at the front of our product range, but all of our innovation today is based on sustainability as one of our key pillars. And within that, we've seen in the dairy industry, in the yogurt industry, there's a prevalence still of polystyrene being used, which often by the brand owners isn't really a product that they want to use. AMB in our rigid material is very much focused on PET. In fact, we recycle over 13 million bottles per day into our PET products as part of our sustainable credentials. But what we're trying to develop is a PET-based product that could substitute the polystyrene that isn't widely appreciated in the dairy industry. So one of the problems with PET is, unlike polystyrene, it doesn't necessarily snap when clicked on multi-packs. So finding a product that actually does that with the PET credentials of sustainability and still having the ability to recycle is just what we're looking at, and are quite far down the track. We're at industrial trial level, and we've got some layer capability within our multi-layer structures which enable that snap. And also we've got some mechanical features as well that we're developing to enable that snap while maintaining the barrier properties and everything else that PET does as far as recyclability. So watch this space, because I mean we're very close to launching the product, and it would have been nice to have been doing that at Interpack, but very shortly you'll be seeing AMB with this product in the market, I'm sure.
Okay, one of the plugs that I was going to make at the end of the broadcast, but seems appropriate to do now because I'm effectively plugging it to you, Giles, is that we have our Sustainability Awards competition deadline on Friday this week, and it sounds as though that may be very interesting thing to put forward to the competition. So yeah, to Giles and to all of our audience, go to the sustainabilityawards.com if you have a sustainable packaging innovation, and it would be great to see your innovation represented there. So final question to AMB. You've spoken about the end-to-end manufacturing concept, AMB 360, and also about this sustainability context. Can you give us a little bit more detail about the benefits that you can provide to customers in specifically sustainable packaging design?
Mark, or me?
Are you going?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay? I thought
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sorry, what was the question?
Just a little bit more detail on the way that AMB 360 services can guide your customers into more sustainable or efficient packaging.
I think if we take one example, I mean, we work quite closely with a long-standing customer of AMB's in Italy, a company called Beretta. They came to us with, and this is pretty much on the back of the Italian maxi tax, to incorporate more recycled material, which is a tax on plastic packaging. They came to us late last year, and asked us to look at their existing product and what we could do to improve the sustainability. Now, this was an ideal project to get the TDX business involved because it allowed us to look at the whole process. We took their existing pack formats, looked at the design, the visual appearance of the pack, but also the functionality of the pack. What we ended up doing there was providing a range of different prototype options and samples which they could put through the supply chain to evaluate through the whole supply chain. And on the back of that, they were able to achieve a 20% reduction in weight, down to 200 micron material, but at the same time improve the top load strength of the packs by 93%. So pretty much a win-win. On top of that, we also improved the visual appearance of the pack, so it was a lot more attractive to the consumer, with no impediment whatsoever to the current manufacturing process that they operated. And the net impact of that for Beretta as an organisation, as well as improving the sustainability credentials of that product, was a £360,000 per annum saving. So that's a good example of how we involved and fused the existing AMB films business, because this was an existing customer for the films business in Italy, with the new part of the business that had been acquired in June, brought all of the elements together to have a tangible benefit for the customer and for the environment.
Thanks very much, Mark. And thanks to all of our speakers. We've overrun rather more than we intended to. So let's move on very quickly now to try and take a couple of questions from our audience. And once again, I have to apologize to those of you whose questions we won't get to. First of all, we have a question for Nerida. The question is as follows. COVID-19 has impacted packaging and sustainability, and sustainability seems to have taken a back seat as packaging shortages for sanitizer in North America continue. How can we get back to the narrative of sustainability? How can we get the narrative back to sustainability after this temporary distraction of the COVID?
I think that's a really good question, because we as an industry have to continue the conversation. We can't stop that conversation. We have to, everybody here as speakers, we have a responsibility to ensure that our members and our customers continue that journey. We can't stop that journey, and we need to encourage people to continue that journey. So I think it's a collective approach to keep having that conversation and encouraging people to don't stop that conversation just because of COVID.
Thank you. Thank you. We also have a question for Nerida from your friend Chakravarti, as he calls himself, of the World Packaging Organization, about the Safe Food Initiative. I'm afraid we won't have time to go into that, but I just wanted to give you the shout out, basically, that he's watching and saying hello to you. Sorry, Chakravarti, we're running a bit short for this one, and I think Nerida already went over some of that. We have a question for Pierre from Shuvik. What will the approach of the WPO towards the packaging fraternity be for building a proper guideline for recycling in developing countries where recycling systems are still pretty unorganized or fragmented? And Pierre, I can see your mic is on mute.
Apologies. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier on, we're working at the moment extremely hard in Southeast Asia, which obviously is a developing area. But we're learning a lot from this exercise. And one of our goals is to come up with exactly what he's asking, and that is some sort of guidelines that we can move across all the different regions of the world. And so we focus on 7 regions, and there'd be a lot of overlapping. So hopefully by the end of this year, we'd be able to give the industry a meaningful answer to that.
Thank you, Pierre. I've got a couple of slightly more technical and narrow questions for Domino and Coherent, which I think, because everyone's been watching for quite a long time, and I think Pierre and Nerida probably need to get to bed quite soon, I'm going to hook you up through LinkedIn so that you can address those questions directly. All that remains is to thank everyone for joining this broadcast. We've had a really great response to this and this series of live broadcasts in our inaugural live week. We hope that we won't have to be making up for a lack of live events in the future, but I think it's probable that we're going to continue to do some more engagement of this sort. So I'd encourage everyone to subscribe to Packaging Europe via our website and to our YouTube channel so that we can continue to bring us these discussions. As I said, the Sustainability Awards deadline is this Friday, 15th of May, so it's your last chance to put forward your best innovations in sustainability across the packaging value chain. Thank you very much for watching, and thanks very much to our fantastic speakers today. Thanks, Pierre and Nerida. Thank you, Andrew, Jason, Giles, Mark, Alexandros, and Michael. Thanks very much.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Bye-bye.
Bye.